What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Patio Slay podcast. My name is Tony, joined as always by Anthony.
What's good, man? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be doing this. I'm always happy to be doing this. I look forward to these days every time we have one scheduled. Tonight was no different. Just one that we've been talking about wanting to do really from the jump of the podcast, and to be able to do it with Pat was amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had this penciled in for a long ass time, and for anyone that's familiar with us, we did a similar episode with 90s hardcore with Tom Sheehan of Indecision, Axe to Grind podcast. We've done 30 years of Maine hardcore with Chris Linkovich. We've done 30 years of Connecticut hardcore with Jay Reason. And then back, 5 years ago now, we did 25 years of Long Island music with Brendan Garone of Incendiary. Me personally, I love the era deep dives. I love the region deep dives. I just think you get so many cool stories. And I almost think it's more fun if you didn't live it. Like the 90s one with Tom was gold because we didn't live the 90s, but we did live the 2000s.
Yeah. And I mean, we had Chris Wren too, and we broke down some of his records that Bridge 9 put out, and some of them from this time. So there are a bunch of episodes back there that kind of fit this, and to be able to deep dive an era and hear about it from somebody who, I mean, you lived it because you went to a lot of those shows, but was on stage during a lot of these shows, right? And toured the country and played with a lot of these bands that now are playing to thousands of people whenever they feel like going out and playing again, is awesome. And I love getting the background of any of that stuff. I mean, that's why we do this, is to find out what was going on for him, what was going on for Pat, what was going on for Have Heart, what was going on for whoever we talked to, Tom, Chris, Jay. It's a blast to get those backstories from people who lived it in the moment too.
Yeah, and we didn't tell Pat this per se, but when we thought of this episode, the 2000s hardcore episode, we were thinking like, who's our first ballot Hall of Fame pick? Who's our first draft pick? It was Pat. Like Pat through and through. We didn't even have a backup. Like if it wasn't Pat, I don't know. Maybe invite Chris Link back, right? He was there for the whole thing. But Pat said, "Yep, I'm game, dude. I lived it." Of course, he was in the Action Taken, Have Heart, ran almost the whole decade, and then their last show at Club Lido in '08. But this conversation, it takes a lot of twists and turns. Like we hit on touring, we hit on the size of hardcore, we hit on some of the labels at the time, his experience on the road. And I think we close it with just some albums from this era that he comes back to. And yeah, man, I love, like, this is why we do this, combos like this.
Yep, absolutely. I'm super stoked for Pat to have come through and talked to us we talked to him for almost 2 hours. I don't know how much of it's recorded, but we did talk to him for almost 2 hours. So thanks again, Pat. And then thanks for you for clicking on it and listening to us, talk for an hour and a half.
So with that, the 2000s hardcore episode with Pat Flynn. Let's go. All right, Pat Flynn is joining us to relive the 2000s, which feels so long ago and like yesterday. I don't know how you think about it, Pat, but
same exact. I think there's been like this collapse of time that like is not shared with anything preceding the 21st century. Like the 90s seem forever ago, in my opinion. The 80s are like prehistory. Yeah,
80s didn't happen. Those were a figment of all of our imagination.
I was born there, but I don't believe that I was actually born in the 80s.
Right. But for some weird reason, something 20 years ago feels like yesterday. And I don't know if like every 40-year-old feels the same way about like if like someone who's 60 now, if they 20 years ago they felt like 20 years ago wasn't just yesterday. Maybe that's like an occurrence. I just turned 40, but I don't know. I think that there's a lot of cultural stuff at play there, and like with social media, like the monoculture has kind of fallen apart, and that's been kind of like the 21st century for the last 25 years. So I don't know. I was amazed when Have Heart started like playing those shows. We were completely blown away that that many people were still interested. And then we did another set of shows, and it like felt like it was even bigger. We were like, what the hell is going on? Like there's been some weird kind of collapse of time. And like Blood for Blood is playing shows now, and it was just like all right, they're back. They're playing. They're just in the
They're all
mix.
back. Yeah. 100 Demons is coming back. Like it's crazy times right now. And
Yeah.
I think about this stuff far too much. Like, so we're going to be talking about the 2000s. I mean, that was 25 years ago. You take 25 years before that, you're into dad rock 1970s.
Yeah, you're in like actual proto punk zone.
Yeah.
Like you're like official proto punk. Like there's not
It's
even
crazy.
like punk start. It's like where you're getting close to the zone where like there was no you're pre proto punk. You know,
There was nothing before it. There was nothing that was. They weren't calling on anything. They were pulling from themselves really at that point.
Yeah, it's totally bizarre, and I'm sure there's like some like essay written by like Nietzsche that could help us figure that out.
Explain it all. So Tony and I were talking before this. We were like, why 2000s? Why you? Right? So why pick this era? Why pick you? So why pick this era? That's the era that I got into hardcore. It was realistically 2002, 2003. And I think when we DM'd you, Pat, I was like, yeah, the mix CD from Iodine had the Action Taken on it. And that's
right.
where I learned about a lot of heavier bands. Like that was Warped Tour 02. And it had like the Red Chord, it had Action Taken, and then like Iodine had Brand New at the time, and Orange Island, bands like that. But that could have been my first like exposure to this music and actually knowing that it was this music versus different avenues and it being some variation of it. But yeah, did that throw you back, the Action Taken?
Yeah, it's funny. The Action Taken actually played with Brand New.
Oh shit, yeah.
At a very small show in Taunton, Massachusetts. And I started going to shows in 1999. So I had a lot of like, and that was also kind of sort of the end of an era of like the rebirth, the so-called rebirth of hardcore, and like the explosion of the Boston straight edge scene, like with bands like In My Eyes, 10 Year Fight, and Riot Brigade. And that was all kind of coming to a close as I was getting into things. So I felt like I kind of sort of just missed a couple things, and the exaggeration, the lore was exploding. Like the 10 Yard Fights last show was turned into like a documentary called The Only Way. Bridge and I put it out on VHS. And, if you just watch that, it really makes you think that like, oh my God, this was the absolute golden age. And I remember years
100%.
on talking to people like, yeah, 10 Yard Fight shows were good, but there weren't like Havard shows. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah.
Not that it was propaganda, but I just like had this, I believed this, like, I looked into the last 10 Yard Fight show and presumed that every one of their shows was like that. And it was just the big send off. But yeah, I don't know, the beginning of that 21st century, I think real quick, just the context of the 90s matters in terms of trying to, I guess if we're jumping into the 2000s.
Yep.
But I really like, I want the world to know that like the enemy was Limp Bizkit. Like, and the 90s was not just the excellent like music from like Kurt Cobain and Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam. Like after 96, there's like a steep fucking decline that like taste, standard, it just like very quickly became this like quite, I think it was just like moronic and imbecilic. Like,
but we were 13 and loved it, Pat. At least I was.
Well, yeah. The thing is, I got like, so I remember my new metal thing was like, it was hard to escape. My older brother and older sister had a very refined taste in music. They really, really were conscious in the 90s. My brother took the bands that influenced Nirvana like very seriously. So like, I remember when I tried to strike out on my own and get my own bands. I remember I specifically remember my brother's car, and I put on I think it was like something from Life is Beachy, some song. And my brother just, or maybe it was Limp Bizkit, and my brother just said, "This is the worst bullshit I've ever heard." I was like, oh, and I remember he gave like a very quick explanation as to why he thought it actually sucked and wasn't just his opinion. And it very much so stuck with me. But then I remember being at my girlfriend at the time's house, and the Woodstock 99 thing was like on pay-per-view. And you could kind of just tell like these are bros. These are all bros. This doesn't feel like the kids in the Smells Like Teen Spirit video. Like these look like dude.
Tell
like,
it was different.
These look like bros. And that was at the time, that I was discovering hardcore and punk in a real meaningful way. And so I enter into the 2000s more so with like a distaste towards the last 2-3 years of the 90s, which I thought were it was like almost like a reaction against the seriousness of deep thinking poetic like singers like Eddie Vedder and Billy Corgan and stuff like that. It felt like that's what it was going against. And so for me walking into hardcore, I kind of carried this antipathy towards the new metal scene, with the exception of Deftones. Like for some reason, I got their first record the day it came out. I went to go get Life is Peachy to this I think it was called Sam Goody or something like that. And I went to get it, and the guy was like, "No, we don't. We're all out, but we do have a new record by some of their friends. It's got like a seashell or something, like this thing on the cover, or like an ear plug thing." I was like, "What is it called?" It's called Deftones. The record's called Adrenaline. And I got it, and I remember listening to it, and there's a secret track on that first record. There's some like ignorant stuff on that first record, but there's like a secret track on it. It's just an instrumental, and it sounds like a Sonic Youth song. If you put it on, it's got this instrumental kind of like quasi experimental kind of jammy thing, and you can sort of tell that they're not really like leaning whole hog into the new metal ignoramus territory.
No. They never did, right? They never did. Yeah.
They don't. And then so when White Pony came out, because then I remember Around the Fur came out, and I really took to it, and it felt again different from everything else. But then when White Pony came out, I remember thinking, that's not surprising that they have kind of gone in this like new metal version of Radiohead.
For sure. And that's what it was.
Yeah. But my I guess my larger point before going, like, I don't know if I've derailed the convo, but
no,
like,
this is
no.
I'm just trying to explain how
we live in that world too. So
yeah, I just how I walked into the 21st century was pretty like at odds with the new metal world, because it felt like it was pissing on stuff that I thought was like really culturally rich in the first half of the 90s.
Well, there was a lot of lowest common denominator in that scene, right? Like they're just, and this is coming from somebody who grew up with it and loves a lot of it, but there was some stuff that was like, this is just like, it's not it. Like you're just trying to be something else, and you're not even really saying anything. So I can see that. I can see how, and there were plenty of people that bucked that and didn't like it. And obviously it's had a little bit of a renaissance the last handful of years, but that's just like anything that was popular 20 years later, it's going to be popular again. It always kind of comes back full circle, but
it seems like it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get that. I definitely get that.
I'm not a hater. I just remember hearing all the reports of like the Woodstock 99 was pretty, just like, I remember just hearing stories of like people being like sexually assaulted in the crowd, like, and bands just being like, yeah. And like, it really like, I was also just discovering like the Riot Girl scene. And so that, man, oh man, that was, the Riot Girls at shows that in 1999, they were present. And like, and so I remember like, yeah, that was the summer 99, and I'm going to shows and I'm seeing like very principled and outspoken women at shows. And like, I remember just thinking like, oh God, like I was listening to Limp Bizkit the other week.
Yeah, and then you get this. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so like that was me walking into the 2000s, and yeah, that I feel like that's an important piece of context to understand where things are kind of shaping in the 2000s, and perhaps how they evolve the way they do. I don't know.
No, I think it is good context, and I'm like you, Pat. So I'm 40. Tony's like 50 at this point. I don't even know
41.
anymore.
I'm 41.
Okay, Tony's 41. So we just missed the 90s. So I have this like strange obsession with the 90s because I missed it. So like we had a 90s hardcore episode. We invited Tom Sheehan on. So Tom Sheehan from Axe to Grind, Indecision. He told us all about the 90s, and even now, like he told us like, yeah, there's a sick lineup and there were 10 people there, where now it would be a festival. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's that context, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, but like you could say that about the 2000s to present. But it is great context because even though, like you said, there's a changing of the guard with In My Eyes and 10-Yard Fight. Even with the labels, there's a changing of the guard, right? So like you had Victory popping off, and once 2000 hit, it was Thursday Full Collapse. Rev, you know, once the turn of the century, Rev was, you know, Curl Up and Die and On the Might of Princes, you know, so there's a whole change, even Equal Vision, Trust Kill. The sea was changing 100%.
Yeah. That was a little hard for me to notice as keenly, I think, in the early days. But I mean, Victory was everywhere, even when in the 90s, when I was like kind of strolling through the mall, go to Hot Topic, you'd have, you know, Victory's, what was the sampler called?
Victory Style.
Victory Style.
Victory Style, yeah.
So that was, I mean, Strife t-shirts were everywhere. I remember seeing Victory around. Rev wasn't as in my face because I just wasn't in the hardcore scene, but I knew it was of total prevalence. And I think that in the, you know, Bridge 9, at least in my world, like it was like pretty prominent. Like when like that seemed to be pretty inescapable starting 2000. I remember the 10-Yard Fight video, The Only Way. EVR was massive. EVR was like the god tier, gold tier label in the late 90s and the early 2000s. It seemed untouchable to the point where I remember like a local band who X-Files X, they weren't miffy about it, but they wrote a song like from demo straight to EVR, kind of commenting like, you know, like, oh, that's crazy. They're just kind of commenting on some of what they was probably perceived as like something like who you know politics, but just even that kind of spoke to like straight to EVR. Like EVR was a massive label, so I mean, I think it was like Hope Conspiracy had just kind of went straight to EVR in their first record, and people were like, "Who is this band?" And they're already on this like massive label. But yeah, Bridge 9 was kind of burgeoning and making a name for itself. And then when American Nightmare, American Nightmare put out the 7-inch, and that was just a massive explosion for Bridge 9. And Bridge 9 did such a good job at promoting American Nightmare that when American Nightmare left the label for EVR, it was like, it seemed like they were still on Bridge 9. But yeah, label wise, that was, I think that era really kind of, for me at least, kind of begins with Bridge 9 and the explosion of just Bridge 9 everywhere.
Well, that's the thing, because like if you're talking tried and true and not a legacy label turning into catalog, or a 90s prominent hardcore label turning metalcore, MySpace world, like it was B9. Pat, what was your B9 handle on the board?
I think it was because I definitely had an account. I think I just one. I think it was just it wasn't anything clever. I think it was just like Patrick Flynn X.
Mine was in My Eyes XX, and no 3 X's, just 2 X's. The irony, I've never been straight edge, so I wonder
if we ever exchanged.
Oh, I'm sure you did. Yeah.
So I actually, now that I think about it, my introduction to all this was probably Rage Renegades. They covered Minor Threat. Yeah.
Rage Renegades. The record.
Yeah.
I was like, is this a band I never heard of? Yeah.
The Renegades cover album. That was probably my introduction.
No. Yeah. That's a good record, I think. But the Bridge 9 board was a new thing too. That was a new part of the 2000s that I particularly did not enjoy. That I think was maybe in late 99. Yeah, like was there AIM in 98, 99? There had to have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
semester, yeah.
Maybe 99. I don't think 98, because
I think you could do it on AOL. You could message on AOL proper, and then AIM allowed the non-AOL kids to get in on the action. That's how it was where we grew up.
Yeah. So like my point is, I remember the first warning sign was away messages and profiles on AIM.
Hell yeah.
Like I remember just very quickly, and I wasn't that astute of a observer of human society when I was in the 7th grade, but I remember just being like, what the fuck is going on here?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like
it was the Wild Wild West. And then you had your profile.
Yeah. The you just the self curation of like the perfect. This is me. Like I remember being like, I guess all this was a quote I'll put in there. I've never really actually thought about this quote, but probably makes me look sophisticated. I remember, but then the message board started popping up, and almost instantly, I just remember seeing ugly, ugly human behavior. The anonymity was nightmarish. And I just remember feeling very quickly the insecurity. Like my band, The Action Taken, I remember there's just a bunch of people shit talking us. I remember being like, I don't think bands were really dealing with this much shit talk outside of fanzines. Like it would just be like shows or like, friends bullshit gossip.
Yeah,
This
friends
was like,
bullshit.
now I'm at home and like people are talking shit about band. I can see it on like fucking computer. And of course you want to see it and you get all pissed off and stuff like that. I remember when that band broke up and I started a new band called Have Art. Someone just started like talking about me like, oh, Pat started a new band called Have Art. And then like some anonymous person wrote like, I'll never forget. They wrote like, I just started the band. We didn't even have a demo out. We had no music out. And I remember someone being like, calling the bad name police. We have a criminal out on the loose. It's like, I remember being like, I'm 15 and I'm pretty sure I know who said this. And they're 3 or 4 years older than me because their thing was like calling the bad band name police or something like that. But I just remember being like, this fucking sucked. And it's just, I think it just got worse and worse and worse. And now you like, if you want to like see what actual hell looks like, you just go on Elon Musk's little website.
Hellscape.
I was
Absolute
going to
hellscape.
say,
Yeah.
the B9 board now is X or Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like some of it spawned to the hardcore Reddit, which I'll check out every now and then. But I was glued to the B9 board from 03 probably through the decade. It was must watch because it was always live, right? People around the world. But like it did bring a lot of good though. Like that's where I found out about a lot of bands. And this was in the Pure Volume era. This was the MySpace era.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go on How's Your Edge. I don't know if
Hated that too. It was the Edge break list. Yeah, that was nice. The anonymity. I remember just being like, this is just bad human behavior here. It's just, I remember Ryan Hudon and I, the guitarists of Have Art, were listed as Breaking Edge having done like body shots off each other's dicks or something like that. I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah, I never particularly loved it. And what it like when by the time that the Bridge 9 board, I think it was like maybe 03 that like it was like kind of really starting to take off as a thing.
It was that era. Yeah.
I just never was a big poster. I always took pride because it would say how many times you posted. It would keep a count.
You keep a count. Yeah.
And I would always take pride in having like under 100 posts, like, and having been a member since like, for like 6 years. Whereas like, I remember going on for the first time, be like, these people have made 1,492 posts. It's like, I've been a member for like, I remember just being like, you gotta start a band or get a life and stop talking shit.
Well, they were the paid to post people. Like they did it while they were on the clock and got paid for it, at their job.
Like they were doing it from work.
Yeah, they were doing it from work. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought there was an underground society that Chris Wren never told me where he was paying people to keep the board active and theatrical.
My guess is he would want the reverse, but it was it was the Wild Wild West. I do look back at it, and for every 8 negative things, there might have been 2 bands. But yeah, I mean, I don't know when that went away. I remember there was like a Board is Life spawn off from it, but I think it's definitely done. But that was to be honest with you, like I think before I was like a B9 kid, I was on the board. Like that's what introduced me to a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I definitely was able, I mean, it connected definitely connected Have Art in the early days, just for making connections, doing a tour. But I am happy to say that the way in which the first Have Art tour ever happened was through like a face-to-face human connection. I met some of the guys who would go on to be like prominent figures in the Atlanta hardcore scene and being members of Foundation. And we met face-to-face as just humans who liked hardcore. And but because of the Bridge 9 board, we were able to like stay in touch. So I think it became like a digital pen pal version. And although I wish it was physical pen paling.
Right. Yeah. The world doesn't need to all see it, right? It can just be between you and yeah.
Yeah. So that was in the first quarter, I guess you could say, of the 2000s. That was another pretty crucial experience that looms pretty large in my head. Very much so, again, with the force that was Bridge 9.
Funny, Tony and I were kind of huddling up thinking about like different topics to talk about tonight. One of the things that I was like, we got to talk about this is just the size of hardcore in the 2000s, especially early, and actually you could extrapolate it through the whole decade, but like early 2000s, Hatebreed goes major label, right? Perseverance, but they're in kind of their own, like the bands they're touring with, it's the Slayers of the world, it's Ozfest, so like that's not really lifting all ships, right? Like so the big bands when I was coming through, like Pat, even you guys in the Things We Carry era were probably pulling 200 people in Massachusetts.
Yeah, that
like
was
right before Things We Carry came out. Where like now a band like Tsunami, it's 1,000 kids is a slow Tuesday.
I know, yeah, that is
it's crazy to think about. Like I think about this stuff more than I should. And when we had Tom Sheen on for the 90s one, he was like, dude, people, you'd go to show, you'd be out on tour and 5 kids would be there.
Yeah, that's about right. I'm trying to think like 200 was a big number. But also I was talking about this because I've had an interesting experience just with Fiddlehead, and just kind of like straddles two kind of different scenes ish. It's not just like straight fastball pitch hardcore scene, but there's a lot of that energy and a lot of that presence as well. When Fiddlehead started playing, not right when we started playing, but when things kind of started picking up, it was like suddenly people were talking about like how many tickets sold. I remember being like, hey,
tickets? What the hell are you talking about? Tickets?
We didn't, the first time, like the concept of sold out was so rare with Half Heart. It only really ever happened when we would play the Chain Reaction in Anaheim, Southern California. And that was like, it was like we had to play like 2 shows in one day. And I remember being like, oh, that's cool. Like even then it wasn't tickets. Kids didn't buy tickets. They just,
there's no
went.
tickets then.
I remember the record release for the Things We Carry was in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and
I went there. I was at it.
Oh, that was a great gig. I fucking loved that show, and it was huge, and it was just go. That was the deal. Just you don't have to buy a ticket. We wouldn't even know how to do that. Like
100%. You wouldn't even. I don't even think there was any forum to do that. And if I think about like Romans, Tigers Den, and Cambridge Elks, ICC, there were no, maybe for the bigger ICC shows there might have been tickets, but like that just was not a thing in this era.
Playing the Middle East, and I think that in the 90s it was more common to play the Middle East for hardcore bands to play. For a variety of reasons it just stopped being a thing. But I remember the other thing to consider about the 2000s is like the big prominence of like indie rock and like the explosion of the New York like rock revival with the Strokes and just onwards with like Interpol and like Killers and Yeahs. That was huge. And I think, and then like there was the 2000s emo scene, and like it just like sucked. So like you really had other things to do. Like you were 16, you're looking around at your options. The hardcore scene isn't super attractive in all the ways we can think of in terms of being attractive, especially when like part of like the social contract is you might get punched in the face. And by the way,
right.
Not a lot of women here. That's not good for attracting women and men. And most guys there look really they're not like just depressed like they are in the emo scene. They're depressed and angry.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly like a real welcoming, hey, this is a great scene. And then you're looking over at like, well, I could gentrify New York and you wear tight jeans and meet people there, and that's things are kind of exploding. There seems like there's an actual scene, and people maybe are making money, and then you have like bands like Dashboard Confessional that are like exploding, Taking Back Sunday's Mass, and it all seems like not too. That scene doesn't seem too impossible. I just remember like and then there's like the Saddle Creek scene. There was just so many other like options, I guess you could say,
It's true.
and it really kind of I think made hardcore seem kind of not, I guess, not exactly all that appealing if you were not necessarily like a tribesman.
Well, the thing is, Pat, is even if you had an appetite for aggressive music, hardcore was on the far end of the spectrum. Even if you had an appetite to go that direction, a lot of people stopped at metalcore and Ozfest world. You know what I mean? Like, so that was even a gate for it. But I always make the equivalent of, at least for me, hardcore in the 2000s was like Fight Club. It was the nichest of the niche. No one knows how they found it. They just found it, whether it's B9 Board or a friend or the Iodine, mix CD. But it was like, if you compare and contrast it to now, it's just a completely different thing. I mean, I can't open my phone without seeing TikTok mosh pit. You know what I mean? It's just a different era.
Yeah, but it really was not well attended for the most part. But it also, and I think that's the thing I've always loved about it, that has made me really kind of look at every other scene or like world in music with like a lot of not resentment, but just like I'm not into this. Like ticket sales matter there in a lot of other places. And I kind of don't think that, I still, as far as I can tell, the hardcore kids of the 2020s, yeah, it's a little bit bigger, but like they're still down for like a shitty underattended Elks Lodge show. You know what I mean? Like, that spirit is still totally there. But in other genres, it really does seem like, if you're not pulling X amount of numbers, you're fucking toast. You're embarrassing. And like, it doesn't feel like bands in other genres and other scenes are like, my general sense is like, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of camaraderie. Like, you don't want to see the scene grow. You want to see your own band grow. And people really want to make it. And like, my sense, thing in the 2000s that I think has held pretty constant since, I would argue, like 1979, is that it's really just like, in my personal opinion, not always, but it's like pure artistic expression. Like, and I'm happy to throw like, SSD and DYS and, to the fix or negative approach. Like, they're not trying to make it. It's just an artistic expression of the human condition. They're not looking to make it. So like, and that still was the spirit, I think, in throughout the 2000s as well. So like, only like 200 people showed up. That was, that's fucking crazy. That's great. The other thing that I think that was pretty crucial, at least in that era, at least for us, was nowadays it's like, if you play somewhere and there's not a lot of people going to your show, it feels like it's like that's like the fault of the band for not being as compelling or attractive enough. But as far as I know, when we would play and there weren't a lot of people there, first off, we wouldn't really give a shit, but we'd always be like, you guys got to get your scene together. This shit sucks.
Put it on them.
Yeah, like, this is on you. You understand that like we have good music, we have good tunes. Like, we're here to give you. We're gonna have a fucking good time regardless. But you guys gotta start your shows. We would never say this to the scenes. I wouldn't get on the mic and berate a scene. The general impression, like, the dynamic was different, and I prefer that dynamic because it shouldn't really just be about the people on the stage. And I know this sounds very idealistic, but it really should, in my opinion, be about the whole process that's involved there. Otherwise, is it not just like, big radio rock bullshit where you want to go to Gillette Stadium and go see Bruce Springsteen? Like to me, it's like, it's so cool if like people know, you gotta play Joplin, Missouri, because it's fucking nuts. Like, we would play Traverse City, Michigan, and I tell people who in Michigan from like near closer to Detroit, and they're like, why the fuck would you play there? It's out in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like, the scene was sick. We play Laredo, Texas. People in Austin or San Antonio playing fucking Laredo. Yeah, because the fucking scene was awesome. Like the kids were going nuts. Those kids brought us to Monterrey, Mexico. Show in Laredo was always great. It was like you were interested in going where the scene was good. And now it's just like New York and LA. You gotta play those. Like, I just that to me was an attractive feature, at least of hardcore in the 2000s, because it was really like, you want to have a good time. It's on it's not just on the band, and it's not just on the people too, but it's a mixture of the both, those two factors. That was at least my experience that I think has shifted since.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm a little bit more of an interloper. I've gotten more into this since we started the podcast 6 years ago. Anthony's kind of opened my eyes, and I've always given him shit. We lived together 15 years ago, and he didn't do it then. Like, he bring me to a show in 2010, bro. But here we are. We're still doing it in 26, and we're talking about it. But you're right, that scene, just as a fan of all music and a bunch of different scenes, and have gone in and out of underground hip hop, or the emo scene, or the new metal scene. Those always, underground hip hop not so much, but the emo scene, the new metal scene, the alternative rock scene always felt like it's about numbers. It wasn't about the community. Whereas I've noticed in our conversations with people like you, and in our going to shows, that it's way more about community. Like, I'm going to the show with Anthony. We went and saw you at Gino's a couple weeks back, and getting there, we see 10 people we know, and it's like, oh, good to see you again. Like, that's why we're here. It's not just because you're playing, but it's also because you're playing. Like, you got us to come out. Everybody shows up. We all have a good time. Even in 26, it still feels that way. Whereas some of those other scenes are more like, well, we got to fill the room. We're worried about the money. We're worried about the bottom line. We're not going to play there otherwise.
Gino's, that was on the Fiddlehead weekend, right?
Yeah.
Forgive me. We played, it was a blur to me because I forgot about that weekend. I left from work and then right back to work at the end of that weekend. Gino's is that the main location?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Great. Because we played a similar. It was like Antonio's, and then there was Gino's. I was like, wait, which one is which?
Italian weekend, baby.
Yeah. But yeah, playing that show was great because I saw people I hadn't seen in like 20 years. But if there was a main scene, you had to play Maine because they had Outbreak and then later Cruel Hand. But it was like those shows were always fucking great. Just to see
man, for music.
Yeah. But and it's an attractive quality, and the nice thing when I say community, I don't really mean like it's not like a very well organized one. It's not, and it's also it's not like born out of like an ancient practice of like religion or anything like that. It's just kind of like, hey, that guy, he's nice. I work with that guy. Yeah, common bond of like music, and you can have varying degrees of like beliefs and ideas, and that doesn't really kind of like put you on the outskirts of just being there. There's fewer and fewer communities that I think are like that.
I do think that the 2000s, it could have been the last decade where I think it was art for art's sake, meaning there was no making, unless you were Hatebreed. Like, I'm not going to speak for any band, but I don't think anyone was making a good living off hardcore in the 2000s. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Where now you have, you can do it. Like, there is a path there, and I'm sure you get a sacrifice, and it may influence sound and all that. But like, I don't know. Spotify wasn't around when The Things We Carry was out. How many monthly listeners would Have Heart had in 2005? 5,000? Pat?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just
a good question.
It's almost like in sports, like you can't compare eras. You just can't. It's a different thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you were to shove that technology in the 2000s, tracks are tracks. I like to think that Have Heart really wrote some compelling stuff, and there's also good timing. Yeah. I think that we would have had a more difficult time standing out in the Spotify era. I feel like it's probably more difficult now for people to really identify something that's compelling because there's just so fucking much. And it also would have been harder for us to write the way in which we did. We didn't have as much to draw from. Nowadays, you're just inundated, and it's like it can feel dizzying when you're starting a project. Like, like all the options and the ideas and the genres are coming your way. I think it has a positive effect in some way of just kind of like provoking an alternative way of doing something, of like writing like musically. More bands are incorporating like synth and into the fold of their music, and maybe that's because of the availability. Like, I would have to like buy an Underworld CD, if whereas like now I can just click a button and listen to Underworld, and now I'm thinking, oh, that might work well in Fiddlehead or something like that. Like, like there's just, I think it would have been harder to write, and it would have been harder to kind of stand out a bit. But I think yeah, I think in terms of reach, it's a good question, because if that question really does put a big onus on the numbers of hardcore, a lot on the role of streaming, and
It's true.
I'm hesitant to do that because, like, yeah, I think I've hit a wall here in terms of like my thoughts. But I think about this stuff a lot too. To what extent are things bigger because of streaming, and does bigger necessarily mean better? I don't know. That's a really good question. Like, how much of a factor is the role of like Apple Music and streaming, and I don't know. It's interesting. I for some reason in my mind, I feel like I would have been depressed
Mm.
if I was, when I started in 2002. So I was like 16, turning 17. I don't know. It's oddly like seems like really easy, but also impossible to kind of like express yourself.
Well, like you said, there's so many things that are coming your way nowadays. And if I were 15 today, you have a lot of things at your fingertips that we didn't have when we were 15, which I'm happy I didn't have those things at my fingertips, because it didn't color everything I did. Like, you were able to find 3, 4 other people, do your thing. Your influences were maybe a couple of the records that you bought at the record store, or the bands that you saw come through, or the bands that you toured with, and you kind of molded your own way a little bit. And I know Anthony and I both ride for the 90s as like our favorite musical decade, but even up to like 05, 06, before the streaming stuff, that some of that music couldn't be made today because there's too much kind of thrown at people.
It's the talk of like music. Is that Cameron Winter kid? I think his solo record is like one of the best things in the last, like, I think this century, in my opinion, like solo wise. Lyrically, I just find it totally excellent. And he was born in this century, as far as I know. And I will say, I like, if that's a digital native person, and if being a digital native, is conducive to writing really rich and thoughtful lyrics as he has, combined with, other factors, I'm sure. But like, I just like, that's a person growing up in the streaming age, and they're putting out like really rich music. I think that's a good thing. But in terms of like hardcore, I don't know. I don't know. I gotta look into more digital natives who are putting out hardcore that's like really compelling. I'd be really curious to see what they're doing. But I can say that I think a 15, 16-year-old Pat Flynn would have felt super daunted by that. And I really don't like the monthly listener thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. With you.
It's such like a weird kick me sign on the back of you, of you. And if like you're just starting to put music out, like you gotta like, first of all, just don't give a shit. Who gives a fuck? Write what you think is compelling and what is like powerful to you, and then you're fucking good. If you're 14 or 15, you're dealing with all those like emotional hurdles that you just are basically neurologically, brain chemistry wired for when you're 14, 15, or 16. And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna put my band out there, and I got to deal with the public knowing that there's like 23 people listening to me per month. Like, yo, 23 people is a fucking lot of people. If they're listening to you, like I always I hate numbers sometimes. I think that they are so like confusing and misleading. It's really about, like, this is gonna sound so corny, but it should be about feeling. So like, the thing that I always find super fascinating is like Fiddlehead was a band for like 3.5 years, and we weren't like trying to make it or any way trying to gain any type of growth whatsoever in our world. We didn't even know what world we were in. The band started to just be like this, like, hey, we just want to play music, take it or leave it. And we played this one show in Anaheim, not far from Chain Reaction. It was in a tiny record store, not much bigger than my office here. And there was probably like 150 people there. But in a record store, energy, the feeling was like, this is fucking packed. And there were, I want to say, like 6 people up front singing along. 6. That's it. And they were singing along for, I would say, maybe like the entire song for like one of the songs. The record hadn't been out that long, but it was like in and out. But it was 6 fucking people. But people were up front watching, but it was 6 people listening. So that meant that 6 people had been listening to us enough to know the words. But the feeling in the room was like it was the walls were gonna burst and it was gonna break. And like just if you do the analytics, you do the analysis, you pause and frame. It's like there's only like 4 or 5 people really singing along, maybe 6. 6 is stretching it, but the feeling and also like the way at which it was shot, it felt awesome. It felt crazy, felt energetic. I remember the bassist at the time was like, "This is the greatest experience of my life," and I remember being like, "That's awesome. You feel that way." I hadn't played a show that was anywhere near crazy like that in years, and I was like, "Yeah, it's a good old feeling." And like the last time I played a show like that was like 2,000 people at the last Half Art show, but this was really nice. It was cool, but again, like the feeling, there was no numbers, and so I really resent Spotify's like, "Hey, this is how many people listening to you," and it's also I think it's a bunch of fucking bullshit.
It's probably not true half the time too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it just probably looks a lot bigger to give the veneer that like the impression that Spotify is a lot bigger than it is. But you didn't have any of that in the 2000s, and I do think that number thing would have found a way to be very depressing. One of my favorite lines, not to come back on that Cameron Winters kid, but there's a song called $0, and in it, yeah, my interpretation of the song is just like fuck the people listening to music that are into the numbers, and he literally says, "Fuck these people." And it's like in this beautiful part. And he's just like, "Fuck these people." And I love that there's a digital native saying that, and to me, that's not surprising because I feel like it'd become a very numbers based culture, but didn't have to deal with that in the 2000s. And I'm grateful for that.
Well, I think it was in my eyes, and I'm obviously going to say this because it was my heyday, but like, I think it was like the last pure decade. It was pre-internet as we know it, pre-smartphone. What YouTube comes out? Yeah, social media. YouTube comes out in the mid-aughts, like 06, and you start to see some live video. But like for the most part, outside of like the message boards and whatnot, it was a lot of word of mouth, and it was like it found the right people.
Yeah, I have faith that there will be really constructive ways of kind of, because that's like a feature that's never going away, like that the word of the kind of obliteration of the word of mouth thing. And I have faith, maybe I'm naive, that like if not right, it's already happening, but there's like meaningful like digital ways of that. Like like when people, I remember my wife and I, we have like this like stupid like stereotypical way of meeting. We met in history class in high school. We fell in love and like we're high school sweethearts, stuff like that. And in my mind, I was like, that's the way it should be. You have to meet the person you fall in love with. But then there's like just life, and then you meet people by way of dating dating companies. Like the only one that comes to mind is eharmony.com because they had a better marketing plan. But like I remember being like a little judgy about that. You can meet someone on like Tinder or something like that. like I'm like, come on, just meet someone in person. And I've had to really kind of eat my own words because like some of the like my best friends have fallen in love with people they met on like by way of like the internet and stuff like that. And like I think that I hear what you mean. I just worry about the language of it being thought of as pure. There's got to be some pure moments but I think it's harder for that authentic one-on-one person stuff. And then it just goes into the realm of perversion when you have artificial intelligence. You're like cutting out the other human. And
Yeah,
now
that's
you're
a
just
different.
talking to nothing. But you think you're talking to somebody.
Ones and zeros, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Really.
Well, and you know what? I think just, you could correct me if I'm wrong here, but the being able to have that still happen with today's 15, 16, 20-year olds, it probably is, and we just don't know it because we're not living it, right? Like, the three of us are all married. You guys both have kids. Like, we're in a different world. We're in a different stage of our lives than a 20-year-old would be trying to, make a connection with another 20-year-old, or a 15-year-old trying to make a meeting his girlfriend in history class and ended up maybe they get married in 5 years. So we just don't see it, maybe. And that might be why it feels like 2003 was the most pure time
The
of all
last
time,
heyday.
right?
That was it. It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. I do see, I work with 15-year-olds and I do see a sense of loneliness, but I don't see everything. I see these kids for like an hour a day and then, maybe 3 to 4 times a week. And so I don't see everything, but it's, I have less faith when you start to read the data of like expressions of human loneliness amongst adolescents, expressions of, the suicide ideation and that type of stuff. And that makes me go like, all right, then maybe that was pretty pure. Maybe this experience of like really more and more human to human like connection was something that we should try to really reverse engineer and bring back into the fold of things. But tying it back to hardcore, I think by the end of the 2000s, by that point, music, it was interesting. What happened with music was, I think Havart was still around for it. Suddenly, you could, instead of buying a whole album, you could buy an individual song. And I remember being like, who the fuck said that was okay?
Right,
Steve Jobs did it.
I'm trying to make a piece of art, not just one piece of
I
that
know,
piece, right?
I'm not selling Mona Lisa's eyes here.
That's a good one.
Not even from like a financial perspective, which, I do think that in 100 years from now, like music historians will look back and be like, that was the greatest theft ever in the history of art. In musical, they just said, yeah, now you can, now that it's on here, now that you've uploaded your stuff to iTunes, now you can buy just the stuff that you want. And I'm gonna be like, that's not good for culture. And I don't know. I would love to talk to Chris Wren about this, but like what that did for like sales. But then of course there was like just everything was like free and you could download it. And it was just like we really had to like guard wherever we finished writing Song Scream the Sun. We had to be extremely careful about it leaking. That was just like
What a
fucking
concept. Even in this world in '08, like crazy.
Yeah, that was big, and like it was just shit would just be out there, and it was just kind of fucking like the presentation of stuff. Yeah, presentation really like kind of does matter. It sets a tone that can last for a long time. But and then I think Havart was done like right before they just said, you know what? How about you just pay $15 a month and you can listen to whatever the fuck you want.
No kidding. Right?
And I remember I've always been doing music, but I not in any really serious financially like money making way. And I just remember being like, I think this is fucking insane. Like, and not even just from like a financial perspective, but from a listener and a maker's perspective. Whoa, like now you can, like we were talking before, you can just listen to whatever the fuck you want, whenever you want. And there's just too much out there. It's hard to focus. It's hard to get attention. It's hard to give attention. And all the while, there's bigger numbers. There's more people out there. And yeah, it doesn't feel right. But like I guess on a numbers, like there's more people attending. I'm not particularly impressed. I mean, you study like human behavior and social psychology and history enough, you start to like feel less impressed by big crowds.
Yeah. True.
The bassist of the bassist of Fiddlehead said, he's like, I'm a little bit older. now, and when I go to see a band, like my version of like feeling compelled to jump off the stage and like and skank into nothing is more so like just like getting caught in a trance watching the band, like really zeroing in on like he's like that to me is like what I want there. That seems very difficult. My least favorite show, one of my not my least favorite show, I was very proud of it, but like the least enjoyable show, I guess you could say, was that big show that Havard played outside with like thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Worcester. Yeah, I remember like this is too much. I just never felt I never felt like less connected to a people. It's just too much. I just don't think it's supernatural. But at the same time, it is good to see. I love seeing shows of like Turnstile playing and like yeah, everyone's together. They're singing along to like good stuff. It's the antithesis of Limp Bizkit saying let's fucking break things. You know, Turnstile isn't exactly like giving out like political overtly. They're not like crass, like giving these like hard like sermons, but there's a political force they're saying, and it's all very positive about human expression. So when you see large amounts of people just really responding positively, it's very, it's very inspiring. I just to me nothing can really beat some of the shows I've played where there's really only been honestly like 100 people. I played this one show in Reno, Texas, and maybe 100 people were there. This is easily the most powerful show I've ever played in my entire life. I there was something extremely cathartic about that, and I very interestingly enough, it stayed that way. And then a couple of years ago, someone said, I saw you guys in Reno one time, and it was just an unbelievable powerhouse show. I've just never been able to like see it as anything other than the most powerful show I've ever been to. And I was like, I felt that too. It's been 12 years. It's been 13 years, something crazy like that. And I don't know where I was going with that, but like I just sort of I hope that's still very easy to have or possible in the streaming age.
I mean, Tony and I never toured in the 2000s. We went to a million shows, and I mean, it was very appealing for someone who was 20 in 2005 to have like an 8-band bill for $8. Like I remember seeing you guys first step at the Billerica Masonic Temple. It was $6 with a can of soup,
Yeah.
And it was right before the Things We Carry came out. But like that was, 7 inches, $2 and $3. It was just, and obviously there's inflation and real term adjustments of dollar value and all that. But I look back at those days. I just you can't beat it. You can't beat it. So I don't know how it was for you touring. Like obviously no one made a dime, but at the same time you weren't trying to make it like we established. So what the hell were you guys doing on tour? It made no sense.
Yeah, one interesting thing about the 2000s and the hardcore scene is that touring it picked up extremely, and I thought it had always been that way. It was just funny when you believe a misperception, you can really reach the sky. It's like I had thought that like since Black Flag, hit the road in '79, that every band just was always on tour, and that was it. Come to find out, like SSD played California, but only because they drove across the entire country to play one California show. They weren't playing every state. And I didn't even know this, but 10 Years Fight, if you watch the documentary The Only Way, which I studied in 1999, I'm sorry, in 2000, 2001, 2002, it gives you the impression that, they go to Europe, they played every European country, they played every state. They only did a couple tours. Havart was like, you got to do every single fucking state. And it wasn't for like some like, big, like, hey, check it out, we're playing. It was like, no, this is what you do, right? But that was also the case with pretty significant amount of bands, and not just like the full-time bands like Terror, but like a lot of like, I guess you could say like part-time or still in school type of bands. Be like every single school break, every weekend, you were just out there. But in the summers, there was literal traffic. We would be not on tour with Think I Care, and we would be crisscrossing, and we would just see each other at road stops on the fucking highway. We're like, we're not on tour. This is with each other, and this is a big country, and it was traffic out to. It was pretty cool. You you would tour out the Sound and Fury, and there would just be this giant wave across America, and you would like combine tours here and there, but like, like from the East Coast to the West Coast, you get this huge wave, and then you get this huge wave back, and you'd be like, oh no, we're gonna go up Northwest. You guys go Southwest. We'll crisscross, so we're not burning out each of the scenes en route back to This Is Hardcore. It was like that was new too. Like the festival thing was just starting to happen, and now it's almost as if there is like a big hardcore festival kind of like within each region, and I think that that's pretty cool. But there doesn't seem like the intensity of the amount of bands and the amount of touring that was happening between 2004 and 2009, at least in my observation, because I was on the road. It doesn't seem like it's there. There was like literal traffic. It's more kind of weekend based now, which is what I gather was kind of the deal in the 90s. And I think that that's healthy. I think, it's a little healthy. It's an unhealthy experience, at least it was for me, which is why we broke up. Because, financially I didn't grow up really with much money. I didn't grow up in poverty, but like I grew up in a position where it was like, I kind of didn't know what not having money, like what it meant. I didn't know, because I was just like a lower middle class kid. I didn't know how little money I was making. So like, we'd come home and I'd have that month's rent paid, which was, oh, cool. I can pay for the month I wasn't living there. But that didn't bother me because I was like, oh, cool. I can pay that rent and I can pay next month's rent. And, you could pay rent and you could eat. And, we would come home. We wouldn't come home with much money. And we were kind of at the top of our game, and we would home with like maybe like $2,000-3,000 or something like that. But like, that'd be like after like a month and a half. So like you do the numbers on that, and you're working literally 24/7.
Wear and tear in the car, you're in the negative.
Yeah, and so that was pretty tough, and there was just all door deals. There was no like guarantee. We did like one tour with like guarantees, and it just felt weird to have a guarantee. It's like, we can't do a guarantee because what if we don't bring anybody out? It's like,
no shit.
Like, so we wouldn't really want to put that much on the promoter. But also from what I'm told, we got ripped off a lot. There'd be like, shitty assholes, take skimming from the top. But it really wasn't we weren't really trying to make money. It wasn't,
right.
The band didn't break up because of money or anything like that. But I think the reality, the financial reality, just, I remember looking ahead being like, I want to have children. Like, I can't be gone this long, and how would I possibly like raise a child with this income? It's not suitable, and so it was one factor. But yeah, like money wasn't really prevalent. The only time that money actually seemed meaningful was when we announced that we were breaking up, and then suddenly it was like, my friend Andy, who helped me book the last tour in the States, he was like, "Hey, we got like a bunch of people asked for tickets," and I was like, "Tickets? What are you talking about?" He's like, "I think we got to make the venue a bit bigger. It's like, it's getting pretty big, and the demand from all the promoters, like people like calling, and like they're calling. Who are they calling?" So like that was in which like there was actually money to be. There was not like real money to be made, but it was like it felt fair and just because we had spent the last 6.5, 7 years, fucking up our lives, like ending relationships, people dropping out of college, people delaying college, just all these big moves, making very little money, and so it kind of it helped us out a little bit, but that was the only like money that we ever kind of really was able to be like, all right, this will help me out. And it was amazing. I paid my year's worth of rent when I got home from that last tour, and I was like, all right, I'm going to work my telemarketing job, which I had throughout the band, and I'm going to go to grad school and I'm going to work my telemarketing job. And then, so I paid off my year's rent, and I paid off a pretty substantial amount of my loans, the student loans. And then about 3 weeks later, the guy who, the boss of the telemarketing job, just said, "Hey, recession finally reached us. So looks like we're going out." And yeah, that's it. And people were like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean? Like, you mean I'm on a call right now? Should I finish it?" He's like, "Yeah, we're done. Like, this is it." And I was like, "Oh, fuck. I have no money." I'd empty my account. I was trying to be like, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to pay off my loans and I'm going to pay off my rent. And I literally couldn't find a job. This is right out of Half Heart. This is probably like a month after Half Heart breaks up. Can't find a job anywhere. I got a degree in history and I want to be a teacher, but I have to go to grad school and I got to work in order to like go to grad school. I was going to the movies during the day in Brookline, a part of Boston, because they would give it to people who like couldn't find work. And I would just go to the movies and like eat. And Pete's would sell bagels for 50 cents. Singer of Half Heart really, really living it large.
Really making it, yeah.
Damn.
So, the thought never crossed my mind about reuniting Half Heart, though. But that was the end of the 2000s for me in 2009. And, I experienced life on the road there and I like music culture at the time. And I kind of, there were so many other explosions of in other music scenes at the time, but I do think it was super special. And I think now in the 2020s, I think that the larger world of mainstream culture is seeing, because Turnstile has been around for like 20 years. I don't really know if people understand this, but like,
yeah, right at the end of this era. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I don't think we played with them, but within months after Half Heart breaking up, I saw them play. I think Brendan like sang a song, did a guest spot for a Down to Nothing song or something like that. But I remember he had joined TUI by that point. But I think with mainstream culture now is just sort of seeing the specialty of hardcore and what kind of like a bit of a loyal service to it really can look like, after 20 years. And it's cool. I like that show that Turnstile played outside with like thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
Was that the Brooklyn Under the Bridge one?
No, it's in Baltimore.
Oh, the Baltimore one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Baltimore.
in the park there. Yeah.
It's just like an ocean of people and there's no barrier. Oh my God. Like what an absolute hallmark of the richness of this weird culture. Yeah, I think, in many ways, like Turnstile was like an old ass band.
It's crazy.
It's great because they somehow feel really new for people. But yeah, like they were part of that ethic. Those guys had, they'd been around in the 2000s as well. And there's an interesting period where I think stuff with hardcore was, there wasn't a lot of love for it in the grand scheme of things. It was way more appealing to go into the New York rock scene and the post rock, whatever people were calling it. I think bands like Killers and like just blowing up. And I remember Half Heart played with the Killers, and I remember like, this is really cool.
Really?
Yeah, and this is like in Belgium at like a huge festival. It's like 60,000.
You're saying the Killers and not the Killer?
We never played with the Killer, but we played with the Killers.
Wow, damn.
But they had like a big festival thing to like 60,000 people, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Right. And like, I get it. Like, I could understand anyone wanting to pursue that genre of music, and then there's a lot of compelling stuff, compelling indie bands in the 2000s as well, emo bands as well. But I don't know. Like, I think that there was some, maybe like you're saying, a lot of real pure joy. Do it because you just want to do it. There's no other option. There's not a lot of.
There's no metrics. There's some metrics. Like the label's going to tell you, hopefully, how many units you move, but monthly listeners doesn't exist, right? Spotify doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Apple Music selling your song for 99 cents doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. It's two factors. It's like, does the band compel you when you see them, and then also like, does the movement of the actual engagement of the people also compel you? And I think that those two things were kind of what was pinballing for Half Heart for quite some time. I think a lot of people were taken by how other people were taken, and then they would get in. Just kind of grew.
Well, if I think about the 2000s, I do think there was a proper it's just the way it worked out. Like there was a proper handoff from the late 2000s to early 2010. So like Guns Up, that Roller Kingdom show, 1,000 people plus, right? That's the end of that era. And then you guys, the next year, right? Edge Day.
Yeah.
And then from there, Incendiary, Backtrack, Foundation, Trapped Under Ice. Literally all the headliners in 2026 started at the tail end of that era. And some of them kept going, some of them didn't, and just came back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. Like our friends, one of our last tours was with Trap Under Ice, and it was cool to see. Like Bane took us out on tour. They were kings of the late '90s, early 2000s, and it was cool. It was a cool chain. I think that you can really kind of trace it back. A lot of that stuff happening, but it's also good that it's not connected. You get people who aren't necessarily part of the circle kind of peeping through, and I do think that that's where there's a value to like streaming is that you're kind of cutting out a lot of the kind of like I guess you could say not nepotism but cronyism that can come from that. So that like, hey, there you go. There's some value of streaming. It can cut into the cronyism, or
Yeah,
maybe just make new lines of it. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
So Pat, why don't we land with this? We're not going to do the top four Rushmore, any of that crap. We're not going to clickbait this, but are there albums from this era that you still find yourself coming back to?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I do think Bane's Give Blood is an actual masterpiece. It might be the greatest.
100%.
It might
Brian
be
McTernan at the helm. Yeah.
it might be the greatest, dare I say, one of the greatest top three greatest hardcore LPs. It's lyrically perfect, musically so advanced, but yet somehow like incredibly simple. I mean, I'll just like I credit to the culture of this era, but like there are a lot of words in the first 3 minutes of this record, and you're already well into track three in 3 minutes into this record. Seeing them play and seeing every single person sing every single word, like you just don't get it. It's a lot of low hanging fruit that people, tend, monosyllabic choruses. This was, and the content of Bedard's lyrics was so rich and deep. It's and thoughtful and philosophical, but also simple and aggressive. Like Snakes Among Us, like there isn't a fancier, more accessible, but also like elite way of saying fuck you.
It's true. Well, Impact, there were warnings for young bands like I'll keep getting in the van, worry about money for the rest of my life. Like the blueprint was there. Don't tour.
Yeah.
Stay.
Yeah. It was just really rich. I think it was great. So I'll come back to that record. I definitely will come back to that record. Early on, they're a product of the '90s, but the In My Eyes record, Nothing to Hide. I just want to top tier. It's like it's everything. It's kind of everything I want in. It's everything I really want in like a straight edge, like a modern kind of straight edge sound. I think in terms of stuff I'll go back to, I will also I'll go back to like, and if I'm keeping in the realm of hardcore, I'm going through the years. So 06, 07, 08. Rival Mob is breaking out towards like the end of that. The demo is just pure HC. The song Ill Informed is just like a perfect hardcore song. I think Raw Life comes out either maybe that's 2010. So that's three Boston bands. I should probably diversify.
I was going to say you're on the Boston train. This is
That's all right. Nothing wrong with that.
No, but I thought Modern Life is Wars Witness was extremely compelling.
It opens with Marshalltown, I think, and then you get Deborah Bones. So
yeah, it was a pretty lyrically powerful record. The Stay Cold record,
TUI.
Yeah, it's
the first release. Oh, actually, I think it's this the first EP.
Yeah, it's so weird. There's so moves I just didn't. I didn't. Not that I disliked it. I just didn't get it, and I tend to like right away. But what I understood is that the people did, and they were reacting, and I was always super intrigued. Like the reaction. There was a lot of like kind of like toughness too, but like I think that was so compelling enough to reach people beyond just the toughness was. I think Justice had some really really authentic way. It's hard to be angry and it's hard to be furious in a way that really kind of like to find the right words that really identifies that emotion that has been done so many times. But lyrics like "You can't hurt me anymore."
Can't hurt me anymore. Yeah, that's all time.
You can't like that's a line that is universal, but it's so hard to identify, pull in. Yeah, in terms of hardcore, But those are the things I've gone back to. Count me out. I love the permanent record in terms of just like straight edge shit, but not even just straight edge shit. Just like genuinely like just great hardcore, in my opinion. The third verse record, I thought was like really kind of crystallized themselves.
Is that with the wall? Aggression?
Yeah.
Is it Aggression?
Yeah, it's got the wall from the Gaza Strip.
The New Fury,
there.
I think, is on that.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great record.
Yeah. Gotta be one more. That's the stuff that was like looming pretty large at the time. But like I was listening to Ill Blood the other day. The record's so fucking good. That's a fun
Front to back
record. I think it's kind of a masterpiece. Lowest of the Low. Todd Jones is just like
Pat. I'm a
opus.
Staunch Suffer Survive support.
Oh yeah, that was really divisive.
All-time record. It's so hard. Actually, there's parts of that are harder than anything on Ill Blood.
Yeah, you're totally right. I was stuck in the mire of straight edge. So like when No Warning like broke edge, I was just like, it sucks. I really like the idea of a hard straight edge band. But so I didn't have anything against them. I was just like, but I knew Ill Blood was super well done. Yeah, I think that those are the things I'd probably find myself coming back to. I think a lot of it is the stuff that maybe I didn't take to me right away because I was so young and I liked what I liked, but I was also extremely focused on what I was like with Half Heart, just the stuff that, was going to put out what I wanted to put out. And so like, my peers were, I wasn't really throwing them on a lot, because I felt like I was kind of in it.
You were seeing them every night, I'm sure, right? On tour. You guys are road dogs.
Yeah, we were in there. We were. I'm impressed. If my kids spend their late teens and early 20s doing what I did, and going to school,
crazy.
I'd be like, nice job. Hopefully you're not doing cocaine.
Right.
Damn, we could go all night. We're gonna let you get out of here. Yeah, I was gonna say, if there's anything else you want to hit. We've kept you long enough. Like, Pat, I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. They don't go to bed.
Yeah, I'm with that too. But thanks for having me. It's nice to talk about the 2000s. I think I will say one last thing. It's nice going down memory lane, but you always got to stay in the present.
Yeah,
it's a good reminder.
Yeah,
it's true.
If I had anything inspiring, like anything inspiring to contribute to the culture, it was because I felt like the past was never coming back. I just missed the end of the 90s in terms of the hardcore world. Like I saw the very tail end, but it felt like that chapter had closed right as I was getting into it. And so bands didn't really reunite at all. And so I just sort of felt like, well, that's not coming back. Judge is not going to reunite and play for me. So why don't I create my own Judge-like experience? And so, that to me is like I've come to really love reunions when they're done totally right and respectfully. But I think that they're done right and respectfully when they really try and keep ultimately in the focus on the present moment about so that the next 14 or 15-year-old kid who's trying to like take the nothing that is in their lives and turn it into something, like feels like they are in charge of doing that, and it's not people behind them who have to do that. I know it sounds like super corny, but like
no.
I think that's the mic drop. I think that's the mic drop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for the chat.
This was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me. Have a good night, guys.
You too.
See you at the next Fiddlehead gig.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Can't wait.
See you later.
Yeah.
See you, Pat.
Thank you for listening to Patio Slave. We are at Patio Slave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Patio Slave Podcast. YouTube, Patio Slave Podcast there. Email us at patioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.